Most people, the biggest mistake that they make is they just say, oh, I'm an SDR at this company. Any executive in the world is not going online and searching for SDR today. Like that's not happening. So on LinkedIn, you have 200 connection requests that you can send per week. I encourage people to get near or at that max because you want to just utilize it. You're not going to be put in jail. From connection to conversation, this is a question that people may have in their head. When do I reach out when someone accepts the connection request? I tell people to wait like 2 to 3 days.
Yeah.
Everything I think about is inverse thinking from what everyone else is upset by. And then I just do the opposite of that. So what do people get annoyed by? Number one is...
You have this idea of the anti-why. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh, you found the anti-why. Okay, this is a fun one.
Morgan Ingram, welcome to the All Dots Connected.
Happy to be here.
So I was personally really looking forward to talking with you as we started to look into your background and what you've been able to do in helping sales teams on LinkedIn or using LinkedIn as an effective channel. I'm particularly interested in this because it's really a mystery to me. You know, my background is primarily in consumer, though we work with a number of B2B clients now. We have teams who understand this, but to me, this is an interesting intersection of people using LinkedIn for a variety of, it's a very, very important social network, right? It's a mechanism for people's professional development and so on. And being at an intersection with companies that are trying to target and work with those people, it's a very, very tricky thing to do right. And so maybe we could start just talking about what you do at AMP Social and how you've helped teams be able to navigate that.
Yeah. So when you think about social and like where we're at today, the main focus and the main thing is that it's just another way to build a relationship. So I like to call them just digital relationships, and it's a way to elevate trust. So the way that we work with teams is we run them through a process called the AMP 5 C's social selling strategy. And so what those 5 C's are clarity, connection, conversation, comment, and content. So when you're looking at social, it's not about just like going in the DMs and just sliding into saying, what's up? We should have a meeting. It's about how do you comment on people you should want to get in front of, but also create content that draws people in. But ultimately, that's why we have those 5 steps is understanding who we're actually looking to get after. How do we actually connect with them so they want to talk to us? How do we start conversations that can convert? And then how do we make sure we stay in their orbit with content and commenting on the right stuff?
And do you find that can work for very senior folks as well? Or do you, in terms of executives who probably receive a lot of inbound, how do you think about modifying those, or do you find that system works for that as well, that group as well?
The strategy, the system can work for anyone. It's all about executing the system and then understanding how it works within your region or your geo or whatever that may be. So when I think about executives, they get about probably 200, 300 sales emails a day, but I actually find that they actually don't get as many relevant or human-based messages via LinkedIn. I would talk to the VP of sales at LinkedIn. Maybe it was about 2 months ago. She's told me that she's got 0 videos in her inbox the entire time she's been in that role, which makes no sense to me. But that just tells people that it's a way that you can stand out by sending a video, a voice note, or relevant messaging. Most people don't take the time to do this. So all of these things could work, but it also requires for people to take the due diligence and work. I find that most people say when something doesn't work for them, it's because they've done it 5 times and they gave up. You just can't do that. You have to be consistent in the process for these things to work. And it doesn't matter what level of seniority that they are.
Yeah. Well, actually, it brings me to something I saw in your background that I thought was awesome. And I'd love to hear about this, which is that you started as an SDR.
Yeah.
That's its own kind of
punishment?
Punishment, courage. Right, exactly. But right on the firing line, right in a situation where you're on the hook.
Yep.
Did you have a background in sales prior to doing that, or did you do that right out of college? Tell us that story.
I had no background in sales. I didn't know any of the acronyms that people speak on today, like CRM, marketing automation, SQL, MQL, like all the acronyms we could make fun of. But like, no, I had no knowledge of anything at all. So this was not only my first job, it was my first time selling. And I actually didn't want to go into sales. I had been interviewing for marketing roles, so I didn't even care to be in this role, to be honest with you. So the only reason I did it is because I knew I was going to sell to marketers, and I knew that would help me. Obviously, it's led into something different as of today, but yeah, I had I had no intention of really taking it to that level, but I knew that it was an important skill to learn.
Yeah. Well, so first of all, I think that's really you can never tell why people are able to be successful, but in my experience, starting there, I got to believe that that has helped you as you built this, as you've turned to in turn helping other SDRs and sales teams to grow. Is that true?
100%, because ultimately at the end of the day, the number one or the top three problems for any business will always be we need more pipeline and we need more opportunities to speak to people to sell to them. So that's what I learned as an SDR. I did 100 to 150 calls a day. I sent out like 100, probably 50 to 100 personalized emails. I spent a lot of time making videos to prospects, doing creative ways to stand out on LinkedIn. So I spent a lot of time on how to get in front of people to get their attention, and they had no idea who I was. So I apply that to everything else that I do in the business that I'm doing today. If I need to generate business, I know how to do that, right? Because that's where I started. And I think it's important for people to learn that skill set, because you never know when you're going to need it.
Yeah. Well, and it's also having the engine, right? I mean, the motor, as they say, right? It's such a critical part, actually, of everything that people do across all categories of
Yeah.
business, right? You have to be able to keep moving and move past failure, which of course is the part is basically is the fundamental component of being an SDR, which is most of it's not going to work.
Yeah. And also the biggest thing when it comes to reaching out, prospecting, or whatever it may be, is everything's around timing. So even if you have a really good message, I always tell people like your timing may be off. And also sometimes you may not know if the timing is off because there's certain things that you may not know what's going on. So it's also just really comes down to being consistent. I see prospecting, pipeline generation, whatever you want to call it, is it's like working out. Like you got to show up every single day, knowing that in the long term, like you'll be in better shape. But some days are gonna not be fun and they're gonna suck. And that's also part of the game. And that's something that everyone has to acknowledge and understand.
Yeah. Well, of course, the game has changed so dramatically, even in the time that you've been doing this, right? I mean, you
Yeah.
you got going in 2000, like 10, 12, 13 years ago, right? I mean, totally different sales motion, totally
Different, yeah.
different mechanism. So let's talk a little bit about what's changed and what's true today about interacting with this audience and engaging them. It's like, what used to work and what's critical in sort of this new environment.
I think just volume play. Like I know some people probably are making as many calls as I did. Like you're not doing 100, 150 calls a day. Like it's completely different. Some people are working from home. Some people are like hybrid in office. Like everyone, most of the part was in office, right? So now the cold calling is a lot different. I think also as well, like the email game is completely different, right? Now we have DNS, we have approval of domains, we have multiple domains. People are treating that differently now. So I think the main thing that is like different is that there's so much volume, and AI obviously adds to that volume, that it's just a lot harder to stand out. That's why I believe you have to be focusing on a couple of elements. Number one is increasing in brand. That doesn't mean that the seller themselves needs to create their own brand, which I believe that you should. It just means the company needs a strong brand in the market so that they can stand out. Because if people can't trust you, it's just going to be more difficult. And I think we're just in a time right now where trust is harder to get and obtain. So having a very strong brand from the company standpoint is important. Then two, you're looking at like diving more into social. More and more people are getting more active on social. If you look at LinkedIn, they hit 1 billion users. So then it's like, how do you make sure that as a seller, you're active where your buyers are? And it may not be LinkedIn. It could be Reddit. It could be X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it. You just need to know where they're at so you can stand out. And then the other thing is IRL. So something that I talk about a lot in my content is going from URL to IRL. And this doesn't mean that you need to throw like a Dreamforce type of event, but are you running mini events with the selective customers or roundtables with selective customers to get in front of them? So those are the things that have changed in sales. And it's not just about doing like, hey, let's boots to the ground and let's just do a lot of volume. There's a time and place for that. I think now you have to incorporate these other things I mentioned for you to be successful.
Actually, just to touch on that for a moment, does it ever work now? Like, I mean, particularly for a high end audience or an executive level audience, I mean, if you're hammering the phones, can you in fact get results out of that at this point, or is it sort of done?
You could. It depends on your industry. So, for example, if you're targeting higher education is really good with cold calling because you have access to the information. So, if you were targeting high education, you would be see more success than other industries. And if you were, for example, selling, I don't know, something related to like gym owners or spas, hitting the phone would work for you. So that question is contextualized based on the industry and the persona, and so harder to answer in like a broad level. But I would say that like if you're doing maybe a normal B2B type motion, you probably aren't making as many calls as you used to. But I also have to caveat and contextualize the question with the answer of it depends on what you're doing via industry wise, because I know people that are still doing, normal screen share hour and a half webinars, but they're making a lot of money. So it's like it just depends on the industry that you're in.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Well, let's take a moment on B2B, targeting enterprise customers with a B2B SaaS. Let's take that
Yeah.
category. Let's talk about the how you think about the playbook there, not only around content, but within the context of your system.
If you just have like a normal sales team, normal marketing team, and you're like, hey, I want to stand out and get out there, let's go back to the 5 C's. So the first part is you need clarity, and you need to really understand who you're going after ICP wise, and not just like, hey, we're going after marketing people. Like, what does that mean? Is it a CMOs that are at Series B to Series D and they have 5 people on their team? Like, you need to get that granular with who you're talking to, because we're just in a day and age now where it's not like where you could just be like, hey, I'm going to reach out to a lot of people that have this title. You have to really understand the pain points on a granular level, because AI has eliminated things on a broad level, but the more specified and granular you can be, the better. And that's just something that we've just seen with targeting and things of that nature. So I'm going to say, hey, get the clarity down on what they needs to happen. Then the next stage is, how do we get our sales team to reach out to those people on LinkedIn, cold calling, cold emailing, things of that nature. And on the other side of that spectrum, from a marketing standpoint, how do we get someone internally to become the hero of those people? So maybe it's the CMO talking to other CMOs. I'm just giving an example. And then how do we set up roundtables and then get our customers talking to not only each other but to other prospects? Because now you're getting content from the actual buyers, because buyers want to hear from buyers, and you go from there. So those are just a couple things that immediately I see that could be helpful.
Great. So let's drill down on each of those, because I think that's fascinating and a really interesting way to think about this problem. So let's start with clarity. So you said, ICP and persona,
Yeah.
and really being very specific about the ICP in the sense of size of company and sector, and then maybe a common set of a good understanding of their pain points given your product. What about temporal, things, new to job? Like how are you thinking about list building, or how are you helping people to think about how to build those lists of who to contact?
Yeah. So most people, so if we're going organizational level and then we're going persona level, the way that I think about this, and obviously depends on what tools you have and what you're doing, is most people you work with, it's within Sales Navigator. And I'll just kind of speak to that because that's most of the stuff I do. But then you can take what I say and then do it on your own. So the first thing that we look at is not actually change jobs immediately. This is actually a really important point when people do pipeline generation, is that people want to reach out to people as soon as they change jobs and they're 1 month in. That actually is the worst time to reach out to somebody, because they don't know anything. Like, they just got there. They have no idea what the pain points are. They have no idea what they're doing. And they're just going to tell you to reach out in 2 to 3 months. So this is actually a waste of your time. So what I tell people is, we need to find the people that have been in the company less than 1 year, which means they've been in that role less than 1 year. And we're trying to find people who've at least been in there for a quarter. So you want to find people who have been somewhere for like 4 to 8 months. That's like the sweet spot, because that means that they have sat there for a quarter. They've seen what's been happening. They know what's going on, and you're going to have a way better conversation than just randomly just saying, okay, here you go. Like you're just going to have a way better time there.
So for in the context of Sales Navigator and thinking about, and let's place this, and we could talk about different
Mhm.
sizes of companies. So let's talk about, you know, um, you get a call from a growth stage B2B SaaS company. They've got a sales team of 12.
Okay.
They've got a good strong executive running that team, VP level, I guess. Um, and and then they've got HubSpot or they've got Salesforce probably, and they've got some sort of list building capability at that point. I mean, they're big enough that they are doing something today, right? So they probably have a variety of ways to build that list. They're probably using Clay or some augmentation tool. How does that play into what you're doing with what you're adding now with Sales Navigator and your approach to Sales Navigator, and then making sure that because what you're doing is part of a continuum, right? They're going to start the thing and they're going to do their thing, and then they're going to be they have to be part of that ecosystem. So how does your stuff plug in that regard, um, to HubSpot and Clay and so on?
Who are they going after? Let's just give an example. Like, who are they going after? What are they doing?
Yeah, I think they're targeting let's say the CMO or the head of growth or somebody like that, right? Somebody who's in the marketing department who is looking at different types of MarTech solutions, trying to figure out how to build the right stack.
Okay, cool. So Clay obviously has a ton of dimensions to it, and it depends on how well versed the company is, whether like my advice on what I would tell them to do. So let's just say they were just using it for like base level, like enrichment, right? So the way that I would do this is say, first and foremost, let's go to Clay. Let's go look at our let's go look at our data for the last 6 months and let's see what deals are we actually closing. Because that will allow you to actually have clarity on like what we need to do next. Because otherwise none of this matters. Once you've done the enrichment on the customers you've closed in the last 6 months, it's going to tell you what buyers and what personas were involved in that sales cycle. At that point, that's when we go into sales nav to then refine. So we run a Boolean search, but basically is like you put parentheses over the title to then get more granular inside your search in sales nav so you can get a defined search. Is basically what that is. So we're going to take the job personas and the buyer personas that we found through the Clay, put them inside of the job titles. We're then going to run another filter of posted in the last 30 days, which means that they're active on LinkedIn, which will increase our response rate and increase our acceptance rate. And then what we're also going to do is see, again, it's a growth stage company, so this should work. We're also going to see everyone that's followed our company so that we can go prospect them. And then we're also going to see what past customers in this last 6 month customer set, what people from that company that is a client that they previously used to work here and now they're at a new company. Everything I just laid out to you should give you well enough data to start. And now what we're going to do is we're going to start combo stacking. So we're going to start adding new filters. We're going to start adding different job titles. We're going to start adding years in less than one company. And we just continuously go from there because we've enriched the data from Clay, because the only thing that really matters is who have you closed in the last 6 months that were best fits. And we want to go find more best fits. Because the more best fits that we find, the better people that we can go target, because they're the better people we can go close. So you just continue that cycle over and over again. And that's the motion that you want to run. Because if you're growing really fast, that means you're getting customers and you have to decide which ones are good so we can get more of those. And then we just continuously double down.
Mm-hmm. And how does that change? Because we have a fair amount of folks who follow us. If you're smaller, right?
Yep.
You're in product market fit. You have a smaller team. You're trying to figure out how to do the same thing. You don't have
Yep.
no followers, really. I mean, you might have followers for the individuals or the founders or whatever, but in
Yep.
terms of the company's brand is still relatively nascent. How would you change that? Uh, you know, what you just described for a smaller company who's trying to get going.
Yeah, so I'm not extremely as well versed in Clay, but I believe it can do a lot. So I'm assuming it can do this. So what you're going to do is you're going to go find all your competitors and you're going to go look at every single case study they have on their website. You're going to scrape all that data from the case studies on the website. Typically, most case studies and testimonials have a job persona. We're then just going to go after those types of companies and those types of people. We don't know yet, right? We just started. So we're just going to base on what is already successful. This company is already successful and they already work with these people. So we're just going to go after these people. And then we're going to find out where our lane is from there because you don't have the data set yet. So we're just going to go after people that are lookalikes like to this, and we're going to reach out to them. We know some of these people will accept to meet with us, and we should close some of these people. And then now we can find out what our ICP is.
That's right. Totally smart. So go with what works.
Yeah, it already works. Yeah, there's unless you want to be try hard and you want to go do it yourself and go through pain, like you can, but or you can just say like, hey, this is already working over here. Let's just go do that.
Well, right, exactly. I mean, I wish I could say in my career I haven't taken the latter approach more than I really should.
I have as well. I mean, I've gone through the pain. That's how I'm trying to get us away from the pain.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like you're the Advil of the LinkedIn people. That's great. Okay, so that's our first C. So that was super. That's great. That and I appreciate the specificity because I think that's really where people have to get going, right? I mean, and you have to figure out how to improve over time. But that's a great starting point.
Yeah.
So what's our next C? Tell us about the next C.
The next C is connection. So this comes down to two things: is that we'll use LinkedIn because most people here are listening are LinkedIn. But if you're not, it really is just like, do you have a good profile that someone be willing to connect with you? And then are you proactively connecting with people where they live? So on LinkedIn, you have 200 connection requests that you can send per week. I encourage people to get near or at that max because you want to just utilize it. You're not going to be put in jail. And then also when you send connection requests to people, let's go back to the senior executives. You have to think like a senior executive in order to connect with them. What does that mean? I tell people, if you want to get a higher acceptance rate, you should send connection requests early in the morning or later in the evening. Most people combat me on this. Then I say, okay, go ask your executive when they go check LinkedIn. I've asked multiple people and the answer is pretty much the same. I check it early in the morning before I go have meetings, and I check it later in the evening after I eat dinner with my family. That is the consistent answer that I've heard from a CRO, from a CMO, from a CTO, right? So if we know that to be true, then we need to map our connections that we send on LinkedIn to that same behavior. You can send them during the day if you want. I'm just telling you this is a better way. And that is what you want to think about is how can I understand when my executive is going to be active where other people may not? Even Sunday afternoon is a good time for connection because they're checking stuff before they go into the week. So these are just things to keep in mind on how to reach out.
Mm-hmm. Totally. Okay. So this is connection, which is do you have a profile that people are like, yeah, all right, there's something in there.
Right.
For somebody who is more senior, easier, right?
Yeah.
But for somebody getting going, right, where you're trying to get your rep, your SDR, or somebody else who's trying to make, or account executive, what are some examples of how you might make your profile more compelling for an executive to say, yeah, I'm doing it?
Yeah. So there's three main things you want to look at if you're an SDR, AE, or even account managers as well, and you're being asked to land and expand. The first thing is you want to look at is your headline. So that's basically like that like subline below your name. And most people, the biggest mistake that they make is they just say, oh, I'm an SDR at this company, or I'm an AE at this company. And then I always ask people, hey, any executive in the world is not going online and searching for SDR today. Like that's not happening. And the thing is, what I've also identified is that the SDR or AE in the headline is actually a searchable thing. The headline is searchable. So again, no one is searching for these terms. And if they are, they're looking to hire someone, and that's not what you're looking to do. So what I would tell you is you have to think about what is the value that you bring to this potential person. What is a problem that you potentially solve for this potential person? And you need to put that inside of your headline. Everything else, it does not matter. And so that's what I tell people to lead with. Lead with a value, lead with a problem. And then that's the way you need to change your headline. So when someone sees the connection request from you, they're like, oh yeah, this person potentially could be a trusted advisor to solve my problems. Second thing is the about section. You don't need to write a whole biography on yourself. You just need to state, who are you? What do you do? And that's it. Like, those are the things that you need to be doing in your about section. So it could be like, here's who I am. I'm a rep at this company, and these are the people that I help. And then here's how I do help. And you kind of break that down a little bit. And the third thing I'd add is the featured section. So what you want to put here is just one main thing you want to point people to. It could be an upcoming webinar that you will have. It could be a use case, a case study, testimonial. You just want something there so people can click it. Everything else, you could do it whatever you want with it. In your experience section, just make sure it's filled out. Add some testimonials in there if you want. But now with the featured section, I think that's way more important than the experience section. And then some people ask about the profile picture. Just make sure you don't look like you've been like kidnapped. Like, don't look like you're a hostage. And then the background cover, I just say throw on maybe your company slogan and your logo. You don't need to do anything crazy there. The headline, the about section, and the feature section are the most important things. Everything else, I really wouldn't worry about as much.
Got it. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. All right. So that's connection.
Yep.
And so this is essentially make it so, yeah, make sure you're reaching out, you're connecting with the people who are on these lists, and you're trying to work against it.
We're building a network of potential buyers. That's what we're doing. We want to build as many potential buyers so that when we connect with another potential buyer, we have mutual connections with that person and they gives us a thumbs up and they accept us. Yep.
And okay, good. Next C. What's our next C?
Conversations. This is where people get excited, right? So this is where you're actually converting opportunities. So there are 3 ways to convert an opportunity on LinkedIn. You send someone a video, you send someone a voice note, or you write out a message. Based on your persona and based on your personality, one of those 3 things will work. I tell people to send videos because most people don't get videos. So I'm leaning on pattern interrupts and getting in front of people in a way that they have not seen before. That's me. That's what I believe in. I also believe voice notes are a good way of connecting because you can do it while you're on a walk. But most people will default and they'll say, I want to do a written message. I'm like, that's fine, but you have to be compelling enough so you don't look like AI. Because most people, when they see a written message, they just immediately think it's AI now. It's just the default of where we're at. So how you go about that is maximum every time you reach out to someone on LinkedIn, you want to reach out at least 3 times. If you go over 3 times, you're getting in a gray area. I'm just telling you, if you want to do 4, that's fine. It's just 3 I found to be the best. So an example of that would be is like I start with a video, I follow up with somebody, and then I might send a voice note, and then that's it. Or I could do a written message inviting them to something, then I could send a video, and then I could send a voice note. Whatever you decide to do is up to you, but I'm giving you those options on what to do. My last point on that is like, because people ask like, how do you deliver this message? Well, basically we base everything on the observation framework. So I want to observe what's happening in their business or about their persona or about them personally. Those are 3 different things: personal, company, or persona. Then I add context to why that observation is important. So let me give you an example. If I saw that they're hiring 10 SDRs, I might be like, looks like you're hiring 10 SDRs. Typically when I see you're hiring 10 SDRs, that means your pipeline number has increased. You wouldn't hire more people unless something has increased. So we want to give context to the observation. Then we state the problem. When you state the problem, this is actually incredibly important, Paul. This actually has been like, in the past 6 months, I've really been hammering this because this is like a new observation for my own self, is don't just state the problem as if you believe that's the exact problem, because you don't know. So instead, you want to say, not sure if this is an obstacle.
But
the reason for that psychologically is that you want to state that, hey, I'm not 100% confident this is it because I don't have the absolute information. So I'm not really sure, but I'm also just going to present something because I think it might be. Because we don't want to fully say this is the exact problem, because I don't know. I don't work at the company. So we want to say, hey, I'm not sure if this is it. And that what it does is it alleviates friction from the conversation. It alleviates any type of like, let's say, hesitation or aggressiveness that you could be coming out because it's outbound. It's like, it's out of nowhere. We're saying we're not sure, but we're still going to present the problem. And then that leads to the next part of the framework, which is the solution and then the call to action. So you follow those steps in every single message, video, voice note, or written, and your message will stand out different than everybody else that says, I want to find synergies with you, which I don't like those messages.
I love that. You know, just because I'd love you to just show an example of that. Maybe just do the video right now.
Yeah. Okay. So let's say, we'll just say I'm sending a video to you, Paul. Let's say you have a team of, let's just say you have a sales team. I noticed that you are hiring 10 A's. We'll use that as an example. And then I'll do an exact video of how I do it. So I'd be like, Hi, Paul. The reason for my video is I was looking at your site, noticed that you're hiring 10 AEs. And typically, when I see that, that means that you probably are bringing in people that have to do self-sourcing of their meetings. And I actually saw that in the job description. I'm not sure if you're facing an obstacle right now where your AEs are being asked to prospect, but they have no system and process. But that's exactly what I just worked with the team on that was going through the same exact transition. And I have a whole entire strategy called the 5 C's on exactly how to do this and break through the noise on LinkedIn to target your key accounts. So is that something of interest that you would like to chat about today? If not, completely understand as well.
Love it. Love it. And that's whatever. That's 40 seconds.
That's about 40 seconds. Yeah, I aim for about 35 to 40 seconds on these. And then again, I could also write that out as well if I wanted to.
And so that's personal, right? It's the person's name. It's very specific to what you noticed, you observed something,
Yep.
you're tying it to a problem that maybe is true, but here's a solution that, if you want to talk about it, happy to. If not, whatever.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And the if not is like a diffuser. So it's like the push and pull. I'm saying, hey, like if you want to chat about it, cool. And if not, that's fine. We also can run another call to action called plant the seed. So I could also say, how does that, based on what I'm describing to you, how does that compare to what you're doing today? Because then you could reply, well, I'm not doing that at all. And then it's like, hey, let me show you some examples of what we've done. It could be applicable to you. It might not be. Whole goal here is you notice that I'm not pushing you and I'm not coming out of desperation. If this is interesting, cool. If it's not, it is what it is. I'm going to move on. So the key with outbound is that you don't want to come from desperation. And the less desperate you are, the more it draws people in.
Love that. Love it. Okay. So next C. This is awesome.
Next C is, oh wait, actually, before we go to the next C, this is actually the most important part. From connection to conversation, this is a question that people may have in their head. When do I reach out when someone accepts the connection request? I tell people to wait like 2 to 3 days. You don't want to come in super hot because, again, we're doing pattern ups. Everybody does that. Everybody sends a connection request and then immediately tries to go and talk to somebody. So we want to do the opposite. We want to wait 2 to 3 days. The only time I immediately send a note is if I got reference to them or I just met them at an event. Or maybe I just came off like a virtual event and like I just talked to them. So just caveats there. So the next one is comment. Now, comment is actually very, very important on the content side because most people immediately think about let's go create content first, but that's very intimidating and that could be very overwhelming if you don't know what to say and you haven't done it before. And I get that because I've been there before. Commenting is a lot easier because all I have to do is just go find a topic or find people that I want to go comment on and just leave a comment. So there are 3 people you want to leave comments on, and I'll tell you who not to leave comments on. The first one is potential buyers. Anyone that is a potential buyer that is posting something, we want to engage with them. We want to show that we can stay top of mind. 2 is partners. So anyone that you're partnered with or customers or something of that nature, we want to stay engaged with them. And then the third one is, I like to say, just subject matter experts or thought leaders in your space. Basically, this person posts and all the buyers in your space gravitate towards this person. So you want to be in the comment section so people know who you are. Those are the 3 tiers. Don't go outside of those. The things you don't want to do is don't go comment on someone's post that has like 1,000 comments just because they have 1,000 comments. Now you're just part of the noise. Or commenting on somebody's post that has nothing to do with your topic because you're just there. That's actually going to dilute who you're trying to get in front of. So you stick to those 3 things. My last thing is you want to just follow this comment framework that I tell people, which is insight and question. So let's say that someone had a post around a cold calling framework. I might be like, hey, this is a great cold calling framework. I've used something similar in the past. What type of results have you seen? What type of results have you seen with this framework? So what I'm doing is I'm inviting a conversation inside of the comments. Now that person's going to comment with me and I can engage. Another benefit as well, if you have nothing beneficial to say and you feel like you don't want to say anything, you can also comment on other people's comments inside the post. So you could just comment on someone else's conversation. So that's the fun thing about comments. You can reply to anyone and you can start the conversation and have some fun with it.
Perfect. Okay. So comment in the last one, last C, and I have many, many questions, but let's finish this part because it's kind of fun.
Yeah. Okay. So that's comment. And the last one is content. So if you are a seller or basically you're in any client facing role and your goal is not to be an influencer or a full-time creator, which is the most people I talk to, like their goal isn't that. And I tell them that shouldn't be your goal. I tell them you want to be a curator rather than a creator. So what that means is that when you're focusing on being a curator, you're just taking information that's out there and you're making it your own. So as a salesperson, account management, leader, it doesn't really matter what you're doing, business owner, there's information about your industry that you should be studying anyways. You should be learning. So let's just say you listen to a podcast about your industry. With AI, this is even easier. Take 3 lessons you learned from the podcast and say what you learned from those 3 lessons that you learned, and then share it on social. You could do that once a week. Anyone can just do what I just said, and you have no excuse because we have AI. You could just throw the transcript in there and just ask for 3 lessons, make it your own, and be done. Once a week, if you did that, and even if you took off a month, that's 48 posts. 1 to 3% of people post consistently on LinkedIn. So now you've just become part of that 1 to 3% by just doing this simple tactic I just shared with you. And the real benefit of this is find interviews that are potential customers and tag them in that post. And the reason that works is because this is called just stroking the ego. Most people, as we're doing this podcast right now, if someone mentioned this podcast and called me out on it, like I'd be like, oh, great. Yeah, I said something and like I'm going to respond. So just like I would respond, everyone else will because they took the time to share their knowledge. If you acknowledge that they shared knowledge, they'll reply back to you.
Right. So those are 4 C's. So thank you for that. That was spectacular. How do you think about that balance of being able to get your team to be able to use this the right amount of time in their day? Because prospecting is part. Like, how do you think about the right balance between what you just described? Because this is pretty labor intensive. There's a lot of.
Yeah. So I think it's all coming down to, okay, so like, let's break it down by deletion of roles. So if you're an SDR, your job is the prospect. So like, you need to figure it out. like you need to figure it out. Like this is what you should be doing anyways. Now for an account executive, it depends on the level where you're at. Like if you're obviously your book of business is stacked, that'd be different than another way that I would approach this. But let's just go ahead and talk about if you're self-sourcing deals, you have an average amount of time on the calendar. You again need to time block. So the way I would do this is commit everything I just said. You could commit an hour and you could do everything. And I'll keep it super simple. You could send 5 personalized videos a day, 10 comments a day, and let's say you sent 10 to 20 messages a day. You could do that in an hour.
And invites, and then invites, right?
And then invites. So you do 20 in the morning and 20 in the afternoon. So if you have your list built out, that would be super easy for you to do, right? 20 invites would take you, I don't know, a minute if you have them all lined up in Sales App. It's like boom, 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 you're done, right?
And are you putting a note in those invites? I presume you are.
I'm not.
You're not. You just send an invite.
So what we've learned through multiple tests and variations, I'm probably going to do it again just to clarify it because I always do it every year, is we send 50 personalized notes and 50 blank notes to test what works and what doesn't. And every single time, and even with the teams that I coach and train, the blank note works every time. A higher acceptance rate. And the reason for that is I believe, again, we're in this world of I've seen this before. I don't want to accept this. Most people that have a personalized note, it says like, let's connect synergies. Well, we know we're going to get pitched. So people are already so defensive and they have this being defensive about certain personalized notes that I tell people to not do that. We send blank notes, we get a higher acceptance rate and that's how you're going to win the day.
What do you think because there's a lot of pieces going into that. They may look at your profile or whatever, all the things you described to make your profile better. What's a good acceptance rate that somebody should be looking at?
25 to 30% is like what you're looking at. And that, again, that comes down to clarity. If you're reaching out to the right people, you should have around 25 to 30%. If it's lower than that, then it could be profile, it could be headline, it could be time you're sending the connection requests. But again, 25, 30% is what you want to aim for. Even if you're at a 10 to 20%, that's still solid. But yeah, if you're in the single digits, there's something wrong with who you're trying to connect with. Something's off.
That makes a lot of sense. You've talked to all kinds of companies, right?
Yeah.
In your practice, you've got a business that's doing great. Um, what's the most obvious mistake that you see when you come in to a company and looking at a team? What's the one big like no
Hmm.
or top three?
I'd say number one is people treat the LinkedIn inbox like email. So they treat it as if like we're sending out emails.
Say more about that.
It's the way it's formatted. So people will be like, "Hi, Paul," and then they'll go into their thing. It's like, well, that's an email. Like this is LinkedIn. It's a social site. So we want to treat it like a conversation. You want to treat it as if you're like talking to this person. So like for format wise, I might start that different. I might just be like Paul dash and go right into it. I'm not even going to do the formalities of a normal email because I want to treat it as if I'm having a conversation with you rather than an email. The approach and the way I'm talking about this is way different. And so I find that a lot of people, that's where they face this conflict, right? Is that they start doing that, right? They start going into this motion. So number one mistake is people treat it as email when it's just you have to treat it as a conversation. Some people will just treat it as this long novel when we've seen successful conversion rates on 300 to 500 characters of a note. And sometimes all the sentences are just together. There are no paragraphs. It's just a message as if I'm texting you. So that's the biggest mistake I see is not treating it like a conversation. Number two is not capitalizing on sending the connection request that I sent and not treating it as this routine. This is routine. It's just if you follow the system consistently in strategy, it will work. If you decide to deviate from it, it will not work. And the third mistake that I'm seeing is people are afraid to lean into things that they don't know it works or not, and they give up too early. So I go into orgs and they're like, "We did video." I'm like, "Okay, how many did you send?" 10. I'm like, "That's not enough. We can't work with that." Like, if you would have given up at 10 cold calls, like you wouldn't be here today. You got to do at least 100 videos before there's even a conversation around if this works or not. We don't have a big enough sample size. Those are the things I see consistently.
Yeah. And so you connect with somebody, you're waiting 2 or 3 days. This idea of interrupt is really smart, pattern interrupt, which is like, it should be different than how people normally do. And then you're sending
Yep.
the video, whatever that three thing cadence is basically. Yeah.
Yeah. So think of it this way, like Paul, like you know who rest in peace Charlie Munger is. So he has this philosophy of inverse thinking. So how I think about everything and how I come up with the pattern rubs is think about what is everyone else doing that people get annoyed by. So what do people get annoyed by? Number one is personalized notes that say we have 108 mutual connections, or we have a lot of synergies, or like I want to book meetings with you, or they state their name at the beginning, right? So guess what we do? We don't do anything. And that's why we have a higher acceptance rate. Then another way I think about it is, okay, when someone connects with you, they immediately pitch you. They call that a pitch slap, right? So what are we going to do? We're not going to send a message immediately because everyone gets mad at that. What else are we going to do? Okay, most people have SDR in their headline. That doesn't lead to higher acceptance rates. Guess what? We're not going to put that. I'll give another example, and then I can keep going, but like I'll give another example to this inverse thinking is that people send long, novel Harry Potter messages to prospects, and they don't respond. So we send videos because nobody else is doing them. So that is the way you can think about breaking through the noise in prospecting. Does this require more effort? Yeah, sure. But are you going to get more results from it? You are. So everything I think about is inverse thinking from what everyone else is upset by. And then I just do the opposite of that. And then that's what we coach people on.
I love that. I love that. You had a, we were listening to some of the other stuff that you've done, and you have this idea of the anti-why. Can you talk a little bit about
You
that?
found the anti-why. Okay, this is a fun one. This one's really deep. It's also can be dark. I'm going to give context on before I explain it. So the why, everyone knows that, like find your why, Simon Sinek, whole entire thing. I'm not going to explain it. Watch the video on it if you don't know, but I'm going to explain the anti-why. So I had a coach yeah, it's probably 10 years ago now, a decade ago. He said, "Do you have a why?" And I was like, "Yeah, here's my why." And he's like, "Do you know the anti why?" And I'm like, "What is that?" He's like, "This is how you could pull from a different energy." So the anti why is, what happens if you don't do the things that you told yourself you're going to do? So basically, the way you think about it is, let's say I am old, I am dying. And my life basically was, my kids did not respect me. My wife did not love me or respect me. My parents ended up dying, not being proud of me. And everything I did in my job, it did not amount to what I thought it would be. My talents that I had did not reach the maximum ability. And as soon as I am dying, I see the person I was supposed to be and I pass away. That's dark. Like, that's very, very dark. But that's anti-wide. That's the energy that I have pulled from. Now, I don't pull from that as much anymore because it's a dark place to go. I believe more in pushing more towards love than fear. But I also am telling people that you have to decide which factors you want to go on. So that was a big thing for me, is pushing from the anti-why. I don't pull from that as much anymore, if I'm being honest, but I also did pull from that, and that's how I thought about things. It's like, I don't want that at all. So what am I going to do to not have that happen?
Right. Right. Well, your particular example is about as dark as it gets.
Yeah.
However,
Yeah, I got to take people to the depths. You got to know how
yeah,
dark this
right, you got to go.
gets.
But it's a powerful idea, and the reason why it's also important though is that every choice we make, right, has both sides of that, right? You hope, in fact, that you're using why. Um, maybe you're going to use the anti-why, but another way to say that is, there's not to paraphrase that MLK, but like,
Yeah.
doing nothing is a choice,
Yeah.
and that has an impact, right? I mean, the point is, it's you may choose to do this or choose to do that or whatever, but like, just sitting in the middle is actually most people's natural state, right?
Yeah.
Which is like, meh, I don't know. And so the reason why the why is so important is that he finds a way to get your ass out of the chair,
Yeah.
right?
Could do something.
But I think I thought this was a really good thing. And what you're describing there is, it is dark, but you know what? Life can be dark. Like,
Yeah.
what are you going to do? What are you going to choose to do? And particularly around this thing, it's I've always found in sales that what makes great salespeople is partly the ability to empathize and find a way to connect, right? I mean, this is really what you're talking about, that, but it also makes you much more vulnerable. Like, if I had this theory about why so many companies are in Silicon Valley are founded by people who have Asperger's, and they can't sell at all, right? I mean, it's impossible for them to make that connection. And the reason is because the product is so calibrated, it sells
Right.
itself, really. And and it doesn't, the good news and the bad news about being a good salesperson is that you can actually get people to buy things that they don't necessarily need fully, or you can bridge gaps, right?
You can't persuade someone and be like,
Yeah.
I don't know if I should have done that.
Right. And they're like, wait, how the hell did I end up with this thing?
Oops.
Right. And, it's actually incumbent on founders and the folks who are building products is to
Yeah.
try to make sure that you don't create something that a great sales team can find a way around to deliver.
Yeah.
But that's it's a fascinating job. And I think it's a great foundation for anybody, because it requires the ability to keep two things in your mind at once: this ability to stay tough in the face of indifference and sometimes hostility, and at the same time always connect with people, because it's about people, right? It's about
Exactly.
And even when you're selling some B2B software product, it's still about emotion. Like, it's still in there. Like, somebody's trying to keep their job, they're trying to pay their mortgage, they're trying to make their equity worth something. I mean, that's so fundamental. So I think what you're describing here really resonates a lot. And even in the context of the anti-why, like, you have to find your things that you can use to keep going, because
I do. Yeah.
it's hard.
You have to have, I've realized this, and I'm curious for you, Paul, as well. Like, there are seasons of what drives you in that moment. I was very driven, going back to 2016, going back to SDR days, and when I started creating content, by proving everyone wrong. That's what I was driven by for years. And then once I did that, that fuel no longer works. So I have to figure out what am I doing now? A lot of things I do now are for the love of the thing. I have the love of the craft, the love of uh, my parents, and returning a favor for them for like bringing us up the right way. I have two younger brothers, but bringing us up the right way. The love of my faith in God, like it's different now. I don't have to prove anyone wrong. That doesn't matter to me anymore. My energy is now driven off of love. But I will say, to get to this point though, I was driven by proving everybody wrong. And I just think that you have to understand what energy you're driving from, but you also have to realize when the energy no longer serves you, because you can't be proving everyone wrong forever. I just think that's de-energizing.
Totally. Well, you're also pointing out something really important for that as people go through the career, no matter what they're doing, actually,
Yeah.
this is actually a really profound idea. Um, the there are the ability to make the transition between these motivations
Yeah.
as you grow in your career is actually a critical skill which no one tells you about.
No,
So
no,
it's
no.
just taking,
There's no class on this.
no, there isn't, but it's
Yeah.
so important, and it's actually one of the few things that there are very few advantages to being old, but one of them is you've seen all this. Like I had my first tech company very early on, like 22, and now I'm old as hell. And
Yeah.
and my original things that I drove me were adrenaline, and I wanted to be my idea. Like early on, that was true. And some of that is critical for building good businesses because you have to have a vision. You have to be able to have an idea. You have to figure out how to force it through even when nobody thinks you're right. And it comes down to some of those types
Yeah.
of motivations. Over time, that changes. And now, actually a big part, and one of the reasons why we do this podcast actually is I just want to make sure people can avoid my pain,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Of trying to, like, if we can figure out how to get information in the hands of people and they can make it easier, like easier is fine. Like
Yeah.
the whole, there's plenty of suffering. You'll have proved your abilities even, and it's funny. I do, because I've been doing it a long time and I know a lot of successful people. I occasionally, people in my career, it was a piece of cake all the way through. They had the right product. It was perfectly timed. The business cycle is the right spot. The private capital markets were in the right spot. They went boop, they sold, and they were done. And which, by the way, is a beautiful thing to watch. And the people who are in it, I know a couple of folks, first timers.
Yeah.
Basically, they got out of school, they did this thing,
And it just worked.
it just
Yeah.
worked
Yeah.
all the way through. And what's important about that is there's lessons in there because the things they chose to do or chose not to do and so on, easier is better for sure.
Yeah.
And I think some of what you're describing is trying to make it easier, which is really powerful. Two other quick questions, that come to mind. And and this is, I know, a whole other podcast, but I'd love to get a couple thoughts on this.
Okay.
You built a very large following on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
What you're describing obviously is very valuable. I mean, I can see why you've been so successful for sure. But help us understand how you got that going, and what's the 2-minute playbook on how to do what you did in terms of driving such a large following?
This is going to be it's going to be very counterintuitive to a lot of people tell you. But if I reflect on it and really look at what people really wanted, nobody really wanted basically, I didn't come from a pedestal. Let's put it that way. Like, nobody wants pedestal content. And pedestal content, you all know what that is when you consume it. It's like, I did this thing, I'm kind of better than you, so like you should just follow me, right? Like, nobody wants that. The reason I was able to do what I did earlier on and still today is that I just come from the experience of what's going on in my life. And I find that when I get away from that, the content doesn't hit the same. So when I was an SDR, I just was talking about being an SDR. I didn't talk about anything else. I wasn't saying, hey, I'm a VP of sales and I exited this company, or like, hey, I just made $1 million. I wasn't even talking about, because I didn't do that. All I was like, hey guys, I'm an SDR. I make cold calls. I do some cold emails. Like, this is really hard. And like, I'm going to share with you on like what I'm seeing working well and what it's not. And that's the reason it connected with people on a different level. Because I wasn't trying to be someone that I wasn't. I was only being who I was in that moment. And in those moments, I've changed a lot. And so like what I talk about is different because I've evolved, obviously. But that's the reason why it connected so much, is that the blueprint is you just need to talk about what you're currently doing and you need to go live life. And the biggest problem right now is people are trying to grab life in different experiences from AI and consuming other information. I actually tell you to consume less information and focus more on what you're doing and sharing that, because that's what people want to know.
Hmm. Fascinating. And so that worked early, and that's continued to be true. Essentially, the mechanism.
It's continued to be true. It just stands out differently. I talk about different things, but I find that when I talk about like, here's what is going on right now in my life and what I'm experiencing, people know that that's real. Especially now, it's actually more important because like like no one else can get this information besides me, because no one else is living the life in from my lens like me. So no other tool could get this information besides me, and that's what makes it powerful.
And how often are you posting to make it work?
In the beginning, I posted every single day, including weekends. Now it depends on what the week is and what I'm doing, but I'd say like minimum I'm doing 4 times a week. Sometimes I won't post at all. It just really depends where I'm at.
Yeah. Man, no, and video. Weird thing on LinkedIn and video. Maybe you could speak to that.
Look, this is gonna. If someone on LinkedIn watches this, you can show me the data that proves me wrong, but I'm only speaking to data. I'm not being emotional about this. Data wise, video has gone down in terms of impressions and engagement. That's just black and white data. Now, LinkedIn is pushing it more, but it's going down. So that's a conversation I'd like to see and understand where that's coming from. So my whole thing with video is I would not rely on it as in like this is going to be my breakout, this is going to be my engagement. It's just a good way to connect with your audience on a deeper level. So I do LinkedIn lives. I'm going to start doing monthly bi-weekly webinars. And I'm just upticking that more, and I see that more as video and connecting with the audience. I still have videos that are like, I call them mid-form videos that are 3 to 5 minutes, and I'm going to start doing more of those as well. But I'm not leaning on that as my strategy because it seems like people on LinkedIn like consuming you with an image and text, and they like consuming just regular text. And that's what the consumers like.
That's right. And then YouTube, evergreen content there. And
That's where you want to do that, right? And we're going to start doing more of that, more YouTube and things of that nature, and start doing more there. But like, yeah, that's like the next stage of that for sure.
all right, last question. First of all, before I get to the last question, this is awesome and really, really grateful for you taking the time and being so. I mean, it's really I know people are going to find this super helpful. I found it super helpful. I immediately after we finish this, I have all kinds of things I have to go do. So,
Well, I appreciate the compliment, and I acknowledge that. Thank you so much.
yeah. So the last question is, what do you see coming? All right. So people get going this, they take all this advice, AI is, continue to really the early stages of things changing radically.
Yeah.
What's your sense of what's going to be true year, 2, 3 years from now? And what do people have to prepare for?
So no matter what, it doesn't matter how you want to spin it, hypothesize it, articulate it. There's two things AI cannot replace, right? One is your stories that you personally have gone through, and two is the soul of an actual human themselves, right? Two things that will not happen. So based on that, what I'm telling people is you want to think about every digital relationship that you have that you built trust with, and you want to transfer that to IRL. So basically what I call it is URL to IRL. We want to have our digital relationships that we've created, and we need to move that to real life. Now, what can that look like? That could be a dinner, a mini event, an activation, whatever. I'm not saying that we need to go do something in person every day, but you do need to be activating that audience with IRL. So as part of the company that I run, Amp Social, as we talked about, we do social selling, right? Helping you build digital relationships to sell things of that nature. But the other component of that is that we host mini events and events as well. And because we want people to feel connected and build those relationships, and that's something that people will crave more as AI continuously accelerates.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. Morgan, thanks so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.